You are looking at a body that still has another body inside it. Not bones scattered in stone, a whole animal curled in the gut of the thing that ate it, right where it died mid-meal. Normally, digestion erases everything. The swallowed simply vanish. But every so often, a predator dies too fast, and the moment of the kill is sealed forever. Hunter and hunted, locked in the same slab of rock. Beneath quarries and seabeds and frozen mines, these double fossils are still waiting. Today, we're opening 6 of them, and every single one is worse than the last. Think for a second about how rare this actually is. When an animal dies, decay moves fast, and the soft parts go first. The stomach and whatever was inside it are usually the very first things to disappear. For a meal to survive, the animal that swallowed it has to be buried almost at once, deep enough and fast enough that the acid in its own gut never finishes the job it had already started. That happens maybe once in tens of millions of deaths. And when it does, we don't just get a skeleton, we get a crime scene with the victim still inside the killer. The first one comes out of a limestone quarry in Bavaria, back in the middle of the 1800s. The workers there split slabs of pale, fine-grained stone so smooth it was used for printing the same beds that would soon give the world its first feathered bird. In one slab lay a small, elegant skeleton, barely the size of a chicken, with a slender neck and a long whip of a tail. It was Compsognathus, one of the very first small meat-eating dinosaurs anyone had ever laid eyes on. For a long time, it was admired simply as a beautiful, complete little fossil. Then someone looked closely at the curve of its ribcage and realized there was a second skeleton nested inside the first. Tucked into the belly of the dinosaur was a lizard. A whole one, its bones still arranged in order, sitting exactly where the stomach would have been. This was the animal's last meal, swallowed roughly 150 million years ago and never digested, because the Compsognathus died and sank into the still, oxygen-starved lagoon floor before its gut could break the lizard down. And the lizard tells you something about its killer. It was a slender, long-tailed sprinter built to dart and swerve, which means the little dinosaur was faster. It ran the thing down, caught it, and swallowed it more or less in one piece. There's a quiet, dark joke buried in the science. When researchers went back and formally re-examined that swallowed lizard, they gave it a new name. And the species name they chose translates more or less as indigestion, a last meal that outlived the dino and the entire age it lived in. And this fossil matters beyond the joke. It was one of the first times anyone had ever seen the actual last meal of a dinosaur, sitting inside the ribs where it died, proof, in stone, of what a predator that vanished 150 million years ago was doing in the final hours of its life. The lagoon that drowned it was a dead zone, a warm, salty basin with no oxygen and no scavengers on the bottom, which is the only reason a soft stomach and its contents lasted at all. It's a gentle way to begin a chicken-sized hunter with a lizard still in its belly. The next animal on this list swallowed its prey the same way. Head first, whole, still recognizable. The difference is that with this one, it wasn't a single unlucky meal. It was a habit we can read. That next animal is one of the strangest dinosaurs ever found. Picture something about the size of a pigeon, sheathed in black feathers that shimmered like an oil slick, and not 2 wings, but 4, with long flight feathers running down its legs as well as its arms. This is Microraptor, and it glided through the forests of what is now northeastern China around 120 million years ago, in a place so perfectly preserved that we know its color, its feathers, and over again, the contents of its gut. One specimen, studied closely just a few years ago, had a complete little lizard sitting in its stomach swallowed head first, the whole body slid down intact, the exact way a heron takes a fish. That lizard was a species no one had ever seen before. It exists in science at all, only because a dinosaur ate it and then died with it inside. But here is what makes Microraptor genuinely unsettling. This was not a one-off. Paleontologists have now found several of these dinosaurs with their final meals still in place, and each of them held something different. One had a bird in its stomach, one had a fish, scales and all. One held the foot of a small mammal. So this wasn't a specialist that only hunted lizards. It was an opportunist that took whatever it could catch in the branches, in the water, on the ground, and we can read its whole menu, one meal at a time, out of a run of frozen stomachs. The way that lizard sits in the gut, nose pointing down the gullet, tells the researchers it was taken alive and gulped in a single motion, not chewed or torn the same efficient, swallow-it-whole strategy you'd watch a heron or a small hawk use today. And the preservation here is almost unfair. These fossils come from the Jahol beds, where fine volcanic ash sifted down through a network of quiet lakes and buried everything so gently that we don't just get bones, we get feather outlines, and even the microscopic structures that let scientists reconstruct that oily, blue-black sheen across its plumage. Each fossil is a single night's dinner, sealed in rock. Line them up, and you're no longer looking at one death. You're looking at a hunter's habits, preserved across 120 million years. And it turns out the animal doing the swallowing isn't always the one you'd expect. Sometimes the thing eating is the creature you were told spent the entire age of dinosaurs hiding in the dark. For almost as long as anyone has studied fossils, the story ran like this. While the dinosaurs ruled, mammals were tiny, timid things, scurrying underfoot, waiting 100 million years for their turn to come. Then a fossil came out of those same Chinese beds and put a crack straight through that story. The animal was Rhipenomammus, a stocky, powerful mammal built something like a badger, and one of the largest mammals of its entire world. In one specimen, researchers opened the ribcage and found the stomach contents still sitting in place, occupying the space where its belly had been. Inside were bones, small ones, jumbled and broken, and when they were carefully fitted back together, they belonged to a baby dinosaur, a young Psittacosaurus, a little beaked plant eater no longer than your hand torn into pieces and swallowed in chunks. The bones weren't scattered by chance or washed in after death. They sat inside the mammal's body cavity in the one place a meal ends up, and they were bitten into segments the size a hungry predator would gulp without pausing to chew. This mammal, the one that was supposed to be cowering in fear, had hunted, killed, and eaten a dinosaur. You can even see how it fed. It couldn't really chew. It ripped its prey apart like a crocodile and bolted down the lumps, which is exactly why those little bones survived as recognizable pieces instead of a digested paste. It is a genuinely grim image, a baby dinosaur reduced to fragments in the gut of a mammal, and it quietly rewrote a page of the textbook. These animals came out of the same region that gets called the Chinese Pompeii, where pulses of volcanic ash smothered whole living communities in place, which is why a fragile thing like stomach contents survived at all. The mammal was entombed almost the instant it died, before anything could disturb what was inside it. And these creatures could get big. A separate, larger specimen has since been found essentially locked in combat with a dinosaur several times its weight, its lower jaw clamped down into the larger animal's ribs, both of them buried alive together in the middle of the fight, frozen at the exact second of the attack. So that tidy pyramid we always imagined, giant reptiles on top, soft little mammals cowering at the bottom, was never really that clean. The line ran in both directions. But on land at least, predator and prey were still roughly matched in size. Out in the ancient oceans, that last bit of restraint falls away completely. Around 85 million years ago, a warm, shallow sea split North America straight down the middle, stretching from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Arctic. And it was full of monsters, giant sharks, long-necked plesiosaurs, and the sea lizards we call mosasaurs. One of the worst-tempered things swimming in it was a fish called Xiphactinus, a heavy, slab-muscled predator up to 5 or 6 meters long, with a jutting bulldog underbite and a mouth crowded with long, curving fangs. It looked, frankly, like something that had no business being a fish. It, hunted by ambush, exploding up from below to swallow prey whole. And that hunting style is exactly what would one day kill the most famous individual of its kind. In the 1950s, a fossil hunter working the pale chalk beds of western Kansas pulled out one of the most famous specimens on Earth, a Xiphactinus, about 4 meters long, almost perfectly complete. And inside its ribcage, stretched nearly the full length of its body, was another fish, a 2-meter Gillicus, swallowed whole and pointing head first down the throat, exactly the way it had gone in. Here's the part that gets under your skin. The big fish did not survive its own meal. The Gillicus was enormous, nearly the length of the thing that ate it, and it appears to have still been alive and thrashing when it went down. Either it ruptured something as it struggled, or the Xiphactinus simply could not cope with a fighting animal that size jammed the whole way down its gut. Within minutes, maybe seconds, the hunter was dying as well. The two of them sank together to the sea floor of that inland sea, one inside the other, down into water so still and airless that the sharks and other scavengers cruising above never touched them. Slowly, the fine white chalk that gives those Kansas beds their color, the crushed remains of countless tiny marine organisms closed over the pair in the exact shape of that final mistake. Paleontologists call this whole category of fossil a fish within a fish, and this particular one, pulled from the ground in the 1950s, is the specimen every other one is measured against. It is greed, fossilized, a predator killed by the sheer size of what it tried to swallow. And astonishingly, it is not the largest example of an animal choking on its own ambition. That one is far older and far bigger. Go back much further to roughly 240 million years ago, early in the age of reptiles, and a warm sea covered what is now southern China. Cruising through it was Guizhuichthyosaurus, an ichthyosaur about 5 meters long, a sleek, dolphin-shaped marine reptile with a long snout and small, blunt, peg-like teeth. Those teeth are the whole reason this fossil is a shock. For years, the assumption was that an animal with simple cones like that must have eaten soft, easy prey squid, small fish, nothing that could fight back. Then a specimen came out of the rock with its belly packed full. Inside the ichthyosaur's stomach was the body of another marine reptile, a thalattosaur, a long, lizard-shaped sea creature named Synposaurus, and it was almost 4 meters long. This 5-meter predator had swallowed something very nearly its own length. Sit with that for a second. Not a fish, not squid, but another large, actively swimming predator taken down and forced whole into a stomach that could barely contain it. You can still make out the prey's torso, from front limbs to back limbs crammed into the gut. The tail, though, is missing. And that's the detail that lingers. A matching thalattosaur tail was found fossilized on the seabed a short distance from the body, apparently ripped clean off and left behind during the kill, so that the last violent moments are recorded in 2 places in the rock at once, the body swallowed, the tail discarded. This is the oldest solid evidence we have, of what scientists call megapredation, a giant animal deliberately hunting and eating other giants, rather than filtering the sea for something small and safe. The little peg teeth turned out to be plenty. The working idea is that the ichthyosaur seized its prey, thrashed it violently to snap the spine and tear it apart, and then bolted down the middle of the body in one enormous piece. The fact that the swallowed thalattosaur shows almost no etching from stomach acid is the clue that the predator died very soon after its last hunt, possibly hurt in the struggle of taking down something that size, and was buried on the seabed before digestion could even begin. One sea monster split open, with a second sea monster inside it, and its torn-off tail lying in the rock nearby like a piece of evidence dropped at the scene. It feels like it ought to be the strangest thing on this list. It isn't. The strangest one is not a body inside a body. It's a body inside a body inside a body. In Germany, there is an old pit called Messel, a flooded volcanic crater that, around 48 million years ago, was a deep lake ringed by dense rainforest. The water at the bottom was so still and so starved of oxygen that almost nothing which sank into it truly rotted. Messel hands up fossils with fur, with feathers, with the outlines of skin, even the last shimmering colors on the shells of insects. And it handed up one fossil that sounds, at first, like it can't be real. It begins as a small snake, a little over 1 meter long, young and adult of its kind, reached twice that length, and a relative of the boas. Ordinary enough, until researchers slid the slab into a high-resolution CT scanner and looked straight through the stone at what the snake was carrying. In its gut was a lizard. Not a scatter of loose bones, a whole lizard. A sun-loving species found nowhere on Earth but this one German pit, swallowed not long before the snake itself died. That alone would make a remarkable fossil. But then they looked inside the lizard, and in the lizard's stomach there was an insect, a beetle, its hard wing shell still faintly iridescent after 48 million years buried in the dark. 3 animals, 2 separate hunts, a single death. A beetle eaten by a lizard, the lizard eaten by a snake, and the snake dying and sinking into that dead lake before any of it could break down, all of them nested inside one another like a set of Russian dolls carved out of a single instant of deep time. Think about how narrow that window was. The snake had eaten the lizard so recently that the lizard hadn't finished digesting its own last meal, which means all 3 animals died within a day or 2 of one another, and then the lake took the snake before its stomach could erase either of the smaller lives inside it. Fossils like this are almost unheard of. The only other comparable one, a chain of 3 creatures preserved this way, is a shark from a couple of 100 million years earlier. It is the whole quiet violence of a single afternoon, held perfectly intact since long before any human being existed to imagine it. That's the thing about all of these. Every single one is an accident, a predator that happened to die at the exact wrong moment and sink into the exact right place, sealing one swallowed meal against tens of millions of years of decay. Which means that for every one we've dug up, the seabeds and the quarries and the slowly thawing permafrost are still holding all the ones we haven't. Almost every one of the fossils you just saw was found completely by accident. A workman splitting stone, a hunter walking a chalk bank, a scanner aimed at what everyone assumed was an empty snake. Somewhere in the rock right now, there is a body with another body inside it, waiting for a quarry blast or a thawing slope or a curious researcher to split it open. The real question was never whether more of them are out there. It's what we'll find inside them when they finally break open. Stay with us, the ground has a great deal left to give up.